Hello, welcome to the regular Keptn community meeting. So today is March 16th, and as I agreed, we will have a special session mostly focused on Keptn documentation. So let me share my screen. So what do we have in the agenda for today? Google season of code, Google season of docs, documentation restructuring with Mac, then formalizing reviewers team because we get more and more pull requests and we probably need to have more reviewers, then new documentation engine as we agreed before, and also Katacoda playground. So one thing that, yeah, I'm not sure Rajiv is ready to present today because he sent a message that there are some study related things. So I will probably push it to the next week, and same for Antora. So that we can discuss this topic in parallel. Any other topics we would like to cover today? Okay, and I'll just start. So first of all, Google Summer of Code updates. So as you already know, we are accepted. We have project ideas. We have potential contributors joining, and we have 7 projects, and there is still demand for more potential mentors. So if anyone is interested, please join, and you can see that the list is already quite extensive. And if you see any potential improvements in project ideas, etc., just don't hesitate to create a pull request. All this documentation is incremental. And as we discussed before, even if we don't have enough GSOC slots, we can have LFX mentorship if you have enough mentors interested. So timeline for GSOC, we actually wait for applications from students, also project idea drafts, and then so they changed the layout a bit, so we need to go to the old one. So what happens here? So we are currently accepted. So until April 3rd, potential contributors just reach out to the communities, try out Keptn in our case, try out project ideas, have discussions. And then until April 19th, there will be application phase. So basically when these proposals are refined and then submitted to Google, and then we'll have selection phase. So next month we'll have discussions, including community meetings, and we can use these meetings for any kind of Q&A, coordination, feedback. But as we discussed before, better to use asynchronous channels like Slack. So no need to wait until the next meeting if you're interested to ask something about Google Summer of Code. So the next related topic is Google Season of Docs. So it's another initiative by Google. Also, Outreach program is relatively new. It's 3 years old, if I recall correctly, which focuses on documentation. There are some significant differences from JSOC, but actually GSOC becomes more and more aligned with Google Season of Docs. So they allow professional technical writers who want to join the community. Also, they allow for longer programs, 6 months. And usually they don't have much projects, so it's something about 50 organizations, 1 or 2 projects each. And the question on the table is whether we want to participate as a Keptn community. So if you want to participate, it would also require mentorship capacity, organization administration capacity isn't that high. I was organizing in JSOC before, it's quite straightforward. But we definitely need mentors who would be interested to focus on documentation.
So, so that sounds like a really cool thing, but I'm wondering, like we do have a lot of efforts going on with the documentation and tutorials and so on. I'm wondering if that's kind of conflicting now, or if we can try to join those efforts together, or I don't know, because I think it's a wonderful project. At least it sounds like one. So, and we definitely need more documentation, also battle-proven documentation. So technical writers would be very welcome, I think.
Yeah. So my vision for that is that we definitely wouldn't start a new documentation effort Instead of that, they could join one of existing threads. So, for example, revamp the documentation side of documentation structure. And the advantage of Google Season of Docs that since it's more professional targeted program, you do not need to have isolated project. You can have a mentee working within the community for considerable amount of time and contributing. There is still a question how you evaluate this work, but it can be a work within the existing track.
Okay, what would be the next step? Should we write a proposal somewhere to go forward with that? Or?
No, so applications are already open. They will be open until 25th of March. So basically, until the next week, we should agree whether we apply. And we need to extend project ideas. So I would definitely put just documentation side, engine content side, because we will need to drag a lot of content, align it, lift all the documentation. So I think that it's something we can do. And if we agree to proceed, I can do all the
let's have it. Let's have a discussion on the Keptn Slack, because I think we will need more mentors than just Mac. I think we should have at least 2 dedicated mentors for that. I'm not sure if I can help with mentoring. My capacity is already on limit, but let's have the discussion on Slack, see if we can find the second mentor, because that would be, I think, for going forward, that would be required.
Yeah,
right. And we'll need tech for the docs, technical consultants too, to help us, if we're doing a project where any writer's going to have questions about what this is and what this means and what needs to be said. So
I agree.
Yep. So I could be potentially a second mentor. I mean, providing technical advice, etc., because I would be around in this project anyway. But yeah, having actually more mentors who are ready to step up, who have more bandwidth, it would be awesome. Because in my case, yeah, I'm already spread too much across the different efforts.
we'll have to.
Yeah, we'll.
I'm not sure because I'm thinking a lot of the work that I can think of that needs to be done are things that would take maybe a couple of weeks, but several of those together could string together into, but it's not the same sort of 6 months or something that, so.
It's perfectly fine because there could be one big project, just restructuring documentation, improving, let's say, developer experience for documentation, etc.
But we actually have there's people on this call who are interested in this stuff, and they started. I started throwing up issues, and they started grabbing them. So actually, some of the things that we want to do are actually already happening from our contributors who are here. So
exactly. So this is advantage for this.
It's very valuable, you people. Let's do more of it. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the work I'm seeing already. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah, and we can discuss organization part later. But yeah, we'll start a thread. Okay, and then any other news we would like to discuss today before we move on? And documentation restructuring. So Mac, would you like to take over?
Sure. Where is my share? Oh, share screen. There we go. Oops. And I had it here so I could get to it instantly, and of course I just lost it in this mass. So working on various issues as I went. One of the first ones that I see as a real problem, we do not really have a complete set of reference pages. We have we have a section called reference pages. We have something for the CLI. We have something for the API that are a little bit. And then over, say, under the quality gate section, we have a bit of reference about the SLO and the SLI file, this sort of thing. We don't have one place where we go where you can get complete reference information for everything that's on there. I think this is indispensable. It is a place. We can't do tutorials for every corner case. This is where we record everything that the product can do, what each of these, like a field in a file, what it can be set to and how you can use it and how it gets populated and how it gets used, all those sort of things. The classic model is the old Unix man.
Are you sharing the screen? Because if you are, you're
not.
Can
you see it? Pardon?
No.
You're not seeing
no,
it?
No, you are not. No.
The problem sharing your screen. Try using another web browser to join this event. Oh, goody. So I can't do this from, let me try again. I'm on Chrome. Does Chrome not work for this?
Yes, it does.
It should, but you might get a pop-up that asks you, hey, do you really want to share your screen? Or some application is requesting screen share. So maybe there's another pop-up you need to confirm.
Okay, I don't see one.
Yeah, maybe while make experiments with that, we could do quick introductions because we have a lot of new people on the call. Subham, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, I did introduce myself previously on the last call, but yeah, that's okay. So hey everyone, I am Deepayan, a junior from India, and I just looked at that Keptn got selected for GSOC 2020. Congrats for that. And I saw that revamping of the documentation side, and I'm pretty much interested into it. I did work with Katacoda before, not much, but yeah, I've also worked with GitHub Actions. So if automation is needed, I can jump in. So yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to. And yeah, it's a great community. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Did you just say you have some experience with GitHub Actions?
Yep.
That's wonderful. We definitely need that.
Because I've worked in Meshri and other sensitive projects. So yeah, they had some issues with that. So I did work on those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, welcome.
Great.
And
great to hear. Thanks.
I agree with Kristen because we introduce more and more automation everywhere. And yeah, so any contributions to this part will be really great. Okay. So, Palmer, would you like to go next? Maybe not. Anyone else? And probably that's it for introductions. No? Mike, how is it going on your side?
Not well. I'm trying to get signed
into
it with
Meg, I can share my screen if you want.
I was going to say that if I send you the link.
Yeah, I have the links. I have it open.
Oh, you have the link. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Wait just a minute.
Yeah, please go ahead then. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Here we go. How much do you want me to do? Do you want me to really sell this, or should we go with?
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Quick value of reference. I don't know. Would anybody question the value of reference pages? It's quick to get to it. Include see alsos that'll orient you to other related material. They are easier to review and update for each new release than all the tutorials. So even if the tutorials get a little out of sync, they are something that are a single source of truth. They're something that, for instance, Dynatrace and other products who may not be able to use all of our documentation because for, the tutorials and stuff, should be able to use most of the reference pages, at least for the parts that they are implementing. The implementation strategy proposing is we'll start out, we have pages that are about, say, one of the files. Not really structured the way I would say a perfect reference page should be, but to get started, we'll pull those all in to the reference page section. The one thing we have to do is we have 4 files currently in the reference page that are not referenced at all, that are the documentation for Bridge, and that needs to be pulled out. I think that's already happening into a separate section, I think at the same level as the quality gate section, to get that done. So, and then we'll have a place where you can go for each file, and then we'll start. There are a lot of, in the source, there are README files, and there's all sorts of stuff that will get us a good start on the reference pages. And then if you can scroll down to the very bottom, I think there's sort of I've got some of those listed where we can grab stuff. The structure, the file reference pages are the biggies. The APIs and CLI have some other, we'll have to look at those. But a standard thing, we start with a brief description, and then we have the synopsis of the file and go through and tell them everything we know about every field that's there. And then there's the usage section, which is kind of free form. You can do whatever you want to there with what you need to tell people about this file and how it's used. Configuration examples are, got it. And then an important one is differences between versions, which is instead of having these rolling, have a different version to reference in each release, this becomes one set that's good for the product, and it will preserve a little bit of history for us. It's very useful for the customers too, if they look at it and I've been working with this file for a while and I don't remember that field, and go, oh, well, it's new in this release or was added last release or whatever. File location, which will have to be, it isn't always going to be a straight path name, but where files should go. And a question for everybody, because it's an open source project, I'm also thinking that it might make sense to show the GitHub location for the source. And then, of course, the C also. And those would be arranged alphabetically. So the reference section would have subsections right now for CLI, API, files, and then a miscellaneous one equivalent to the old man 5. The one that I saw immediately for that is distributor, which right now they have a README file that it just lists all of, apparently just is controlled by a whole bunch of variables. But this would be a place where we can describe all of those and what they are for and how that works. The other one that I'm still toying with is I'm calling them the event metrics, the things that are used in the SLI and SLO. And I am thinking there about, and I'm pretty new to this, so I may not understand the situation there, but that it would be good to have a list of all the event metrics that are defined in the product, by including all of the different services that you could have and have this something that is generated automatically, similar to what in Jenkins they're doing with the steps reference. So it's not the most marvelous writing job, but it's comprehensive. And then for the steps reference, and I think this would be nice here, have the ability on your local installation, you can run this and you get a local copy that tells you just the events that are defined for the services that are installed in your environment. So that's not the first pass of it, but this is what I see that I have thinking of. I would especially love to hear reasons why people think this is a bad idea.
So if I may add some comments here, the way that the website or the docs are structured right now with the versions is coming from the fact that there have been a lot of breaking changes over the time. Obviously, there is still heavy development going on. So the quality gate feature, the SLO, SLI files, they have been modified over time. Same for events, they have been modified, but we are seeing them being a lot more stable now since the last couple of releases. So it perfectly makes sense to do it the way you describe it, by pulling it out of the version and putting it like on a top level. However, with the API, there are still some changes going on. So what we definitely would need would be some kind of badge telling like, this is okay, or this was it the way we used it until Keptn 0.12, and maybe this one is the new API endpoint for Keptn 0.13. So you can see it immediately when you access the page, and you don't have to like go back in time or whatever. But something like that, just to have a badge or some informal string that tells you, hey, this is until Keptn 0.12, and the other one is now the new one for Keptn 0.13 or something like that. And another thing about the distributor itself, the distributor is a very, very technical instrument that you usually shouldn't need to interact with unless you are writing your own Keptn integration. I think that is a very, very specific use case that is not necessarily the end user that is going to do that, but a developer. So I think there needs to be some distinguishment between what the developer does and what an end user does. But that is something we can talk out in a GitHub issue, discussion, whatever.
Right, and a first take on that is that some of that it's still true. I mean, we did just have a question come up in help on it, and it was somebody who wanted to limit the stages that the distributor was working on, and the documentation that's there. I forget. I think it was the distributor didn't say, but the values.yaml file didn't tell them that they could, specify a comma separated list.
Yes.
So there's a couple of little things.
Yeah, I agree. There is a second part of the distributor that is user facing. Basically, when you install any integration, could be Helm service, could be job executor, whatever it is, Prometheus, there is a user facing part. I forgot to mention that. So, but yeah, there's two parts. There's a user facing part that's very small, and then there's a developer specific part that most certainly needs also a special place to live.
Yeah, and I also think people, as we've concentrated so much of our documentation now is just getting people onboarded, but there's a lot of people who want to understand how it works, and I personally find it really useful to read through the reference pages for even stuff I'm not going to touch. But part of that is in the description. We can say right up front, this does such and such, and you almost never need to touch this file unless you're doing such and such. We can put that up very prominently. And we'll still have guides and tutorials, but we say, here's how you do this thing. And if you want to know everything you can do with this file, it's over there.
Maybe it also brings up a question about top-level entities, because what we gradually did in Jenkins over time is introduced separate developer guide, separate user and administrative guides. So basically for 3 key roles. And also contributor guide, so actually 4. So maybe it's also something we could shoot for in Keptn, because Christian is totally right. A lot of content is solely required for those who develop things. And maybe it should be put separately right away. So for example, if we talk about the documentation on Markdown files, repositories usually have developer MD or something like that inside the docs, where they put all developer documentation. And maybe when we restructure the content, we could do like that, and then aggregate it into documentation on the new documentation site.
Right. Now, I would advocate that the reference pages would not be separated. That in the content they can say you don't touch. The only reason you need this is for development or something. But yeah, definitely then we need what I call guide material, where you explain how to use this and the common things you do. Yeah, we definitely need to distinguish what is developer and user and admin. Of course, then admin management, it all starts to get ugly. But and one of our goals also, it would be really nice if we had a good search engine so you could find things.
So Rachel in the chat mentioned that cloud event specification. So it's actually one of the examples of good specification documentation. but it
So
was
Yeah.
that
mentioning
would kind of be
that
miscellaneous.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could use that as well, because I think that's really great reference.
okay, so command pointing to cloud events indeed.
Now, one question that we have to, and of course, I suppose it's always, when you're a writer, you want everything over in the text where you can make it beautiful prose, because that's what we do. There's certain advantages to having the material co-located with the code. So if you change the syntax of a command or something, you see right there that the documentation doesn't mention this flag that you just added or something. So that's going to be something we're going to have to think about. And I know, I mean, a lot of this stuff is documented in README files in GitHub. And I look at that, I don't think I mean, there's some amazing information there, but whether the quality, you know, whether that's what we want for the documentation, I'm not sure. I'm inclined to think no. But this is, you know, I think we're going to have to look at this as we go forward. And somebody, Adam asked if we could pull dynamically the environment variables. I don't know this product well enough to know if that's possible, especially if we have a way to embed. We definitely need is a way that we can put more commentary in than on a single line of inline comment. That's sometimes not enough. But there are ways, you know, that can be embedded in the code and then get pulled out for the system. So we would say that in general, anything that can be generated automatically is a good thing, because we can constantly and make sure it is always in sync with the source code. And then we have to trade that off as to whether we get the right level of information and the quality of information with it. And
yeah, I can briefly answer for that. Well, in Java code, there is multiple ways to generate documentation from code. It's Java, and for Golang, it's actually the same. So for Golang, there are already annotation projects that generate, for example, gRPC specs or Golang docs, whatever. And we can try introducing some annotations right inside the code as one of the ways. Another one is to just have a standardized spec file in the repositories, which can be used for both code for generation. So basically generation in code from the spec file, and generating documentation. And personally, I would rather be tempted to use the latter one, specification file, because it would be more flexible in the future.
And I will completely defer to you on those sorts of issues. We'll have to decide. And that, yes, I'm trying to watch these comments and pay attention to the conversation. It's interesting. Keptn CLI is auto-generated now. The Keptn API reference page right now, I'm just filing an issue for that. That's a little bit of a problem, because that tells you how you get this material on. It gives you instructions for pulling it up, and it gives a link that's to your local system. So if you're not on if that link in the documentation does not work, and I'm not sure. I would like to see the API out where I could see it when I was not on a system that had it installed or before I installed it. But gonna have to look at that. But yes, anything that can be auto generated or code in the or documentation in the code, that's good. And Adam, in general, I would love your assistance on anything that you would choose to give it on. I'm impressed. I've been watching your videos. You're good. So, but for all of the rest of you too. Yes, we're going to need lots of. I'm willing to do a lot of the work, and we're getting, as I say, a lot of our good newcomers to the community are jumping in and working on some of this, because we do have enough started, and then we can enrich. So. Christian, I'll check Slack when we're done. So is the general consensus it's okay if we continue? We've out there that I said we can't merge that until we at least discuss this with the community. So, does anybody object to us moving forward on this?
I do not object, especially if you touch on the version 0.14, because 0.14 hasn't been released yet. One problem with that, significantly restructuring the tutorials may cause difficulties for developer teams because they need to propagate these documentation changes between versions. But I would actually argue that previous versions do not matter too much right now. And for us, just preserving links is generally a good idea because we don't have test automation which discovers broken links, as all of us learned hard way. So it means if you refactor documentation, somebody will eventually just update the version somewhere in the code and everything breaks. So maybe it's something we should really think about prioritizing, doing some GitHub actions for checking links. It's super trivial for Markdown in the current organization. But otherwise, I think that we should proceed.
I also think we should proceed. Just one comment that we need to take care of is do not break existing documentation links. So for instance, the link we see on screen, captainsh.docs/ shipyard in the 0.13.x, that might be already linked. So that needs to stay until 0.13 is deprecated. The new ones can be wherever you want them, on whichever level you want them. And I actually see the development team being responsible here for updating the links in the code. They need to be aware of that, obviously. So let's get them onboarded with the idea and give them a warning, hey, we're changing the docs. But I don't think it's a big deal. I actually think they will be happy to hear that the version string gets removed from that link, because that is causing a lot of problem. You know, you need to take the current Keptn version of the CLI to generate a link to the docs. If you can get rid of that, it's much simpler.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, so we use Netlify for publishing documentation, and we can actually configure redirects. So maybe all key external references could be done through redirect, so that we can just adjust if we do massive documentation changes. And also versioning strings, so including versions, I believe that should be gone from external documentation entirely. So we either point to latest docs or we point to redirect link, because the approach with linking all the version of documentation is doomed by design. So if we are ready to invest in at least identifying key external links to the documentation and setting up redirects, something I can help with.
I mean, there shouldn't be too many. Some of them are in the CLI, as far as I'm aware. Some of them might be in Keptn Bridge, but really, we just need to create issues in the Keptn core repository telling them, hey, this is the new link to the documentation. Please verify in CLI and in Bridge that you changed them. I think they will be happy to see that change, because if you remove the version string from that, it's a huge pain to generate a link, you know, and maintain that link with a version string. If you can just remove that, it's better. Also, to what Suraj said in the chat, if you search on Google for a certain topic of Keptn, you are not necessarily ending up on the latest version of that topic. You might end up on a deprecated version, and therefore removing the version string is very, very important. And actually, I don't think we should do too much with redirects. Like, it just generates more maintenance effort. When you release a new version, you need to create new redirects. Like, let's do a breaking change. I'm fully in favor of doing it. Just make sure we inform, let's say in this case, Keptn core via GitHub issues or directly via Slack, and it should be fine.
Also, I'm super tempted about firstly adding redirect for latest. So it would be something Keptn sh/docs/latest for basically which we would default to. For contents we don't move outside the documentation. It's trivial to do now. The problem that we would need to generate robots.txt, because while the current search is basically crap, that Google, etc., they have no idea how to index the docs, which we can generate a robots.txt so that we could ignore previous versions of documentation by default, and we can point to latest. But we need to see whether it will work with redirects, because definitely Netlify won't be able to construct the sitemap correctly for the bot by default. So it might require some additional automation for that.
Should we also think about, I think it's not terribly difficult to implement an XREF check as part of our CI/CD. And that would be, I mean, we need to go through and manually check and try to fix as many, but that's because there's going to be references that go outside this doc and pages change, etc. That I think there's some things that I think there's software out there that we can use to generate that fairly easily, isn't there, Oleg?
Yeah, there is. So what we can do, probably developers will hate me after that, but we can create a global GitHub action which verifies actual absolute links and relative links within the repositories for markdown files, and create issues if a link is broken. This part is trivial to implement. There are existing pipelines for that. So we could try for a few repositories and then probably enable globally for all the repositories within Keptn, Sandbox, integrations. But yeah, I would expect some level of false positives because of that, because we have weird templating. But otherwise, I think it should work.
And meanwhile, git grep 0.08 finds a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
we should probably drop all the documentation up to 12 at least, because in 12.1 we had a security release, 0, no 11, and theoretically versions before we don't really encourage people. But in this case, we would also need to talk to Kiratech team, because KRATEOps uses Keptn, and they rely on these documentations for data trace and cloud automation. So talking to adopters who repackage the product Keptn, it would be important. But otherwise, it should be fine.
Adam, this advanced install options, that was in 8 and it got pulled out. Adam, are you still there?
So you mean the last comment on the list?
This something in 0.8x operate advanced install options, and that file is gone now.
Okay.
Oh, Mike isn't working. They just dropped the table in the new versions. Okay, I will file an issue to look into it and get that restored.
Yeah, I just take a look. It was there in 0.10 and it was removed with 0.11. I'm also not aware why. I think it's a very useful table for the installation, because you can customize your installation. But I guess it was a pain to maintain it because there is no automation.
Yeah. So
is there a way to automate that at all, or?
It is. So Depayan, if you let me screen share, I can show it. Yep. So this table is definitely generated. And yeah, so minimum thing we could do is just putting YAML files or whatever in the repositories and aggregating them. It's a small matter of coding. And it's not that big right now. We had a lot of challenges with Jenkins system properties, which we manually managed at some point. And actually me and Daniel Beck spent a lot of time reworking them, because in Jenkins we have something like thousands system properties, and currently, so this page is fully auto-generated. So you can see properties in the Jenkins core, and then if you scroll down, there are plugins somewhere. So the user experience is still a crap, but at least now it's auto-generated. Before that, it was a huge table, then it was a huge YAML file, and now it's generation, which probably something we could do. So again, it's just a GitHub action in generating content.
By the way, there is actually a link. If you go back to the documentation, there is a link that says the full install options can be found in and that links to the Keptn source code repository.
In the bottom?
If you go to release 0.13x for the same page, like you can change the URL from 0.8 to 0.13.
Yeah.
Scroll down. There is a link. The full list is, yeah, exactly. There we go. Not there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the list is still kind of there. You need to dig through it a little bit, but I guess the intention was to have the list in the Keptn source code repository. But as you can see, this is the problem right now. You have a link in here. The link works, but you're not finding the expected content. So
yeah. So in this case, if you see something like that, please just file a bug to the documentation, because from user experience, from developer
I will do.
It's the bug. And we will put some templates to make it more easier. And what we already discussed with Mac and with others, having buttons that actually help. For example, again in Jenkins, yeah, I keep it using as example because we did a lot of such investments. So here's report the problem, and when you click it, it automatically uses issue templating. That generates at least sample pointing to this page, etc. So maybe it's something we could do there.
Yeah.
Okay. So
you said you're going to file the issue. I was sitting here, Natalie, making notes. That would be better if you could do it.
There is a tool which automates the generation of the documentation around Helm values. I think we'll have to try it out though. I've pasted the link in the chat.
So yeah, we don't have an official project idea for all these kinds of automation, but for me, it's kind of implied to GSOC as well. So for me, it's also part of the documentation engine. If you are interested in such auto documentation or auto generation, I think it could be also a fully viable project idea that would probably not align with what we have, but it would follow the same goal. And actually, it can be one of the options for Google Summer of Code. We have many of contributors who are interested in this project idea. So maybe having some separation, let's say documentation engine, this auto generation pipelines for GitHub Actions, all of them are fully viable project ideas and can be done separately. So it's one of the topics we could keep discussing. And that's why it's nice to have a discussion in public, because we can touch all these points and see who is interested in what, and maybe even coordinate proposals to some extent. Because if there are multiple good contributors interested in the same project idea, having some alignment to let everyone work on that is actually a good opportunity for us.
Indeed.
Okay. So should we move on to the project idea? We have something like 10 minutes left. So we have, so definitely be slightly slow on this topic, but we have a documentation engine and also Katacoda. So for documentation engine, do we have specific topics we would like to discuss today? Because so Rajiv cannot participate. I will also move Antora based demo to later so that we discuss them together, maybe next week in our folder meeting. So for this project idea, we briefly discussed it. So question to all contributors, are you interested in this topic? Do you have any questions right now we could clarify? So again, as you could have seen from today's meeting and discussion, there is a lot of areas. And one thing I would like to highlight is that it's project idea. And you can come up with your own project proposals based on these discussions, etc., which are completely not aligned with this project idea. So for example, Rajiv makes a point that the Kuzaros is better than Entora, and it's totally valid for discussion, and let's see how it goes. I'm super interested to have this conversation. And if you see other topics you're more interested in, just creating a lot of GitHub actions, automating documentation generation, etc., all of that could be valid. You just need to be sure that the most of the project remains about code, because it's still Google summer of code. And yeah, so if there is no questions for this particular project idea, we can talk more about Katacoda, because Katacoda is basically the same part. It's also a part of documentation for me, but rather for tutorials and for automating these tutorials so that we can make it easier for users to get the environments and calculate Keptn.
Yes. I have a question with Katacoda, because for Katacoda, somebody actually has to pay for each instance it's spun up, correct?
Or
And-
we get sponsorship.
Okay, yeah, that was my question, is how do we work that cost, if we get this set up. We can't set it up so that I say I want to go in and do it and my company will pay for my usage, right?
Yeah, so some companies have contracts with Katacoda. So for example, if you're an employee, if you want to release a product and it is available on Katacoda, they just go and start using it. Also, we can discuss maybe some sponsors from these Keptn vendors, etc., who would like to have these tutorials as a part of their course. So for example, Dynatrace does a lot of workshops for Keptn. And for cloud automation, which could be also reused. So again, we could find an option to get it hosted. And this is how it happens for other tutorials, etc. Sometimes there are sponsors.
The other issue that comes up with these things that, and I know it's an issue and I know there's solutions. How do we keep people from using this and setting up a Keptn environment with Katacoda and using it to run their latest Bitcoin scam or whatever else, how do we ensure that they only use this for what we intended and not for nefarious purposes? Does have a way of enforcing that, or?
Yeah, there are some tools, but generally it's up to you. In containers you create, you can put some limitations. Plus, all containers that they provision, of course, they have a limited number of credits on them in terms of execution time. So it's not like you would be able to go and count Bitcoins on them. Well, probably you could, but I guess it's an issue for Katacoda as a service, and they already have some resolution for that.
Also, I don't think that Katacoda is, in that sense, going to be used to deploy workloads. You will have a tutorial where you might install Keptn, but only the control plane. So you would not do a Helm delivery or whatever, Chemida tests. That's the wrong, let's say, a platform for that. But the control plane, getting access via API, getting the bridge, getting to test some features, that is what I guess what you could do with that. And then anything else like Helm, Chemida, Job Executor, Prometheus, that is, I'd say, more advanced usage that will require you to have your own cluster somewhere.
Is Afzal on the code, by the way? Yep, because maybe you could speak more about this project idea because you have more experience with Katacoda than us.
No, it's not like that. Hip hop. Hi, everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
I was also exploring platform. So I thought, like, as we already have Keptn tutorials. Where is that? So here you can see like we have those things written out in the simple words explanation, very simply, but it gives you all the instructions to use in your platform, maybe whatever cloud native infrastructure you are using. But then I decided to create a simple playground for Keptn Hello World. So let me just give you some jamming this one for the sake of simplicity.
Thanks for creating this POC.
Yep.
What Kubernetes engine does it currently use under the hood?
Yeah, this is on the top of K3's cluster. We are building up on the top of K3's cluster, wherein we can use that like Keptn CD cluster. That is continuous delivery, so we can see this in this works, how it works.
Yeah, and it also brings up the point that we could probably speed up Keptn startup, especially for tutorials. Because currently Keptn isn't very fast to initialize, and maybe this is something we could improve, at least for demo scenarios.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's taking some time.
Is that worth an issue, Oleg?
So from a user experience who tries out tutorial, yes, it's an issue. So for example, Adam created a Docker demo in K3D, which prints hello world. And yeah, this demo after the recent changes works like a charm. Thanks a lot, Adam. But still, it takes something like several minutes to get this demo started, and most of that Keptn waits in different timeouts, etc., in the console. Understand that there is some technical reasons on the hood, but if you could speed it up somehow, so for example, removing unused services and just optimizing some delays, etc., for demo environment, if it could start up in several seconds, it would have provide much better wow effect for anyone who evaluates it.
Yes, I agree with that. I think I've found some trouble with this. It's taking more than expected time. Maybe there's some failures.
Yeah. So.
In this, yeah.
So basically, by this time, the most of users would have left if they were doing the demo.
Exactly.
Also, very important, if we do that as an entry point for users, we need to constantly verify, like with every new release, even if it's a patch release, we need to try out if this environment is still working or if something is broken. So whatever the new demo, the new quick start, whatever it is, we also need to consider some sort of automation and end-to-end testing, because it's the same as we have right now. Like we have no end-to-end tests. Some users try it out, they run into a problem. Most of them come to Keptn Slack and ask for help, and we can fix it. But yeah, it would be better if there is no problem, if it just works. And sometimes it's just out of our control. Like right now, maybe Katacoda has an outage. Maybe it's an internet provider problem. I've even had people that were unable to access the Keptn.sh website for whatever reason, because their company or their ISP has banned .sh domain for no apparent reason. So there's a lot of pitfalls that can happen. And we need to eliminate as many as possible.
Agree. So for me, Katacoda is definitely not a full replacement for existing tutorials, but it would be nice as additional playground, and maybe it would be good, especially for tutorials. So quick start, we could keep them as well But for some tutorials, etc., we could use Katacoda to bootstrap the environment needed for this tutorial. So, for example, if you have a tutorial for how to use auto remediation with Keptn, etc., you don't need 15 steps how to set up Keptn like it's written in the current tutorial. So this part could be really automated with Katacoda so that you get environment ready to go, or it could be with Helm charts. Yeah, just time to learning content is very important.
Yes.
I think the problem is not just limited to Katacoda. I think the problem is Keptn, like Oleg said. The quick start guide itself takes a lot of time to do everything. I think when I tried out, it took me like 5 minutes to get Keptn up and running.
So I'm not sure what quick start do you use now, because currently Adam created one for K3D, which is much faster. And yeah, the new version 0.0.9 is actually stable on all the environments where it was tested by now.
Oh, this is interesting. I tried the old way using K3D.
Yeah.
It is Docker based, but I did not see this one. I think this is new.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really new. Well, in practice, it's a bit it's taken longer than it's presented in this CLI dump, at least on my machine. But yeah, it works.
How long did it take for you?
Well, several minutes.
Okay.
But in my case, I use VSL, but still it's much better than experience before because yeah, I can show it to you.
Yeah, I remember trying it out with K3D. I feel like this might be faster.
Yeah, so with all the containers cached, etc. Yeah, I see that we are going a bit over time. So thanks a lot to everyone.
Yeah, I just wanted to like some pitch out here. Sorry for interruption. Could you like anybody open the link that Katacoda which I've shared with you?
Sorry, which link?
Yeah, like yeah, can you make a favor with this? Let me share with you.
Just
Of course.
okay. So what do you want me to do here?
Yeah, I can start out because from my side it's not working as expected. So I thought like can start out this.
Yeah. So maybe one logistics question. If you want to experiment with that, do you need a Keptn organization on Katacoda and things like that? Because if you start experimenting, maybe it makes sense to start on what's going on. Yeah, so if you want to start prototyping, maybe it makes sense to create a Keptn profile and basically share it with the team so that we keep all the experiments, etc., on the official profile. What do you think about that? Yeah, I guess I can do something like that. So what do you think about that? Would you need it for your tutorials? Or is it not needed?
You can skip to your profile page. Skip to what? Hackers, yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's already a great start. So if there is a way to maybe create a GitHub issue or whatever and start putting all these links so that everyone who is interested in this topic could try it out, provide some feedback, and maybe contribute, I think it would be a great next step.
Yeah, I agree with that. And basically it's working, but I don't know where I have just laid out.
By the way, thanks to everyone for putting your ideas in the chat. I'll probably just dump chat to the meeting notes so that I can process it later. Because yeah, I definitely see a lot of useful ideas there. For example, using JS doc, etc. So I will process it later.
Yeah. So bye everyone. I have to drop off. It was a nice discussion. Yeah.
So it's indeed, and thanks a lot to Afzal and Mac for driving a lot of content today. And thanks, Christian, for feedback.
Thanks so much for the
And
suggestions
Bayan
and the conversation.
for sharing and also presenting your site. So it's really interesting, and I think that we should keep doing that. Maybe it makes sense to have a meeting next week, same time, so that we can continue with the topic, maybe having demos. Because definitely there is a lot of brainstorming to be done. So for me, it's probably not too early to start regular meetings dedicated especially to docs, like documentation working group. But yeah, having another discussion would be useful. What do you think?
Could be.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should also like start with some baby steps and quick wins, like focus on them.
Yes.
And work from there, because we like it's a huge task, like won't be done by a week. It probably will need half a year to get everything done. We should just get started with the quick wins, and maybe we can work in parallel on some topics.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
And a lot of these, if we get the basic structure in place, that's what I'm saying, to take the existing pages that aren't structured right. When we get theirs, and then when somebody thinks of something or runs into something, we've got a good, you can do a quick PR and add the information. We can rewrite and restructure later, but we could start growing the wealth here. So
yeah, exactly. So I will basically put the organizational topic about reviewers to the next week, and I will also move all this discussion for new documentation engine and demos also to the next week, because we briefly discussed it, but I think that there will be a lot of to discuss next time we meet. And if you're interested, just put more topics so that we can deep dive and review the things. Okay.
okay.
Then thanks everyone, and yep. So tomorrow we also have a community meeting, but later, so it's 4 p.m. UTC. And yeah, next week I will schedule another one focused on documentation. Okay. Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.